One of the traps that lots of us fall into over the course of our lives is believing that because something is true, or at least it feels true today, it will still feel that way tomorrow, or it's always going to feel that way. You could be low on confidence, you could be struggling with your health, with your weight, with money, it could be motivation, it could be a specific thing that you've convinced yourself that you simply cannot do no matter how hard you try. Whatever it is, it rarely begins with certainty. There are obviously exceptions to that, but for most of us, it usually begins as something small, like a negative thought or a passing comment from someone or a bad experience. And like any seed, when you give it enough attention, enough of your energy and the right conditions, it's going to grow. And eventually, that tiny seed, in this case, we'll call it self-doubt, becomes your lived experience. And that's not because it was true to begin with or destined to be that way, but because you spent so long reinforcing it. This video isn't about blame, and I am certainly not suggesting that we create every circumstance in our lives. That is just not true, and it's not fair. Life ebbs and flows and things happen. Stuff goes wrong. People can become sick. Relationships can break down, and circumstances inevitably change. And while we obviously can't control everything that happens, all the stuff that happens, we do influence how we experience it. More often than not, the way we choose to see the world becomes the world that we experience. Think about it. Two people can experience exactly the same event and derive completely different realities or outcomes. Use outcomes from it. Take two people working in the same company. So same job, same department, same salary, same gender, same boss. They both get made redundant. The first person sees this as failure, rejection, proof that they weren't good enough and that they've never been good enough. Whereas the other person sees it as an opportunity, as redirection, or as the push that they needed. The event is identical, but the reality they experience isn't. Why? Perspective. I spent a lot of my young life leaning into a glass half empty kind of mindset, and I've got loads of examples, most of us do, but this is a good one. I suffered with Osgood-Schlatter's disease in my left knee from a young age, about 11 or 12, and over time I built this really compelling and convincing story around what that meant and what it would mean for me going forwards. What I could do, what I couldn't do, what would hurt, what wouldn't hurt, how active I could be or how active I couldn't be. Then, about 17 years ago, I had a big mindset shift, which I've talked about in previous videos. I'm not going to go over that now. It didn't happen overnight, but basically I stopped wanting to be limited by that condition. It wasn't doing me any favors anymore. In fact, it was getting in the way of what I wanted to do and who I wanted to become, mainly because I'd gotten into meditation and I'd become really interested in walking, being mindful, being outdoors, being present, which helped me a lot with what I was going through at that time. Anyway, long story short, now I walk lots. I mean like lots, about 25,000 steps a day. No pain, no issues. Whereas the younger version of me couldn't do more than 5 squats in a row or go for a walk around the block without complaining about the pain. Now, I am not suggesting that my belief alone healed my knee. That's not what I'm saying. What changed was my relationship with what I believed, or what I'd convinced myself was possible. That changed my behavior, which changed my identity, which ended up changing my reality. I had just got caught up in the illusion, one of my favorite words, which happens to lots of us, most of us. If I don't believe I can do something, the likelihood is I'm not even going to bother trying, at least not properly. And if I don't try, I won't learn. If I don't learn, I'll never be able to do it. And eventually the belief becomes the reality, not because it was objectively true in the first place. How could it be? I'd never tried, therefore I didn't know, but because it determined my behavior. So the illusion is not the outcome. The illusion is believing that the outcome was inevitable. And here is where it gets even more interesting, unless you're my wife and you've heard me say this 1,000 times. And I do want to stress that this is all just obviously my opinion, my take, and I can only base this on what I know to be true through my own personal experiences. But lots of us wear these limitations like a badge of honor. I definitely did. Not consciously, it's subtle, but it's almost as though reinforcing the narrative or the stories or the limiting beliefs is more important than discovering whether or not they were true in the first place. And if the first time you hit a hurdle and you stumble and you fall and your response is going to be something like, well, I knew that would happen, or I knew I couldn't do it, or I knew it wouldn't work, then the likelihood of you trying that again is slim, or at least slimmer. And in that moment, being right becomes more important than growth, than your personal growth. And validation ends up superseding transformation. I like that, it sounds good. So I've come to the conclusion that a lot of the time we don't actually want the things or the stuff that we say we want. What we really want is the identity that feels familiar. Someone wants abundance. I don't know why I did that. Someone wants abundance. They want money, but they identify as someone who struggles. They want to attain peace, inner peace, but they identify as someone who worries. Someone wants happiness, but they identify as someone who doesn't deserve it. That last one resonates with me, which is why I put it in there. So your conscious desire is pulling you in one direction, and your identity is pulling you in another. So over here. And annoyingly, but inevitably, your identity usually wins because it determines your behavior. So whether you choose to view this as psychology or conditioning or energy, my favorite stuff, frequency, vibration, and resonance, the principle remains very similar. The stories we repeatedly tell ourselves, the stories we perpetuate, influence the actions that we take, and those actions create momentum. Momentum determines direction, and eventually we arrive in our reality. If you believe you're incapable, you are, until you're not. Now that may sound like a contradiction, but it isn't. I'll explain. The moment you challenge that narrative or that story, so the moment you test the assumption, the illusion starts to break and crumble, and through the cracks a different version of you can emerge, and that different version of you will have a different perspective, a different identity, and because of that, the potential for a different future. Because I have come to believe that we do not get what we want, we get what we are. So for those of you struggling right now, I get it, but for what it's worth, what I'm about to say worked for me, and if there is even a chance that it might help someone else, why wouldn't I share it? So maybe instead of asking yourself, what do I want? The better question is, who have I become? And is that version of me helping to create the life that I've been looking for? Or is it keeping me stuck where I am? Whew, some harsh truths. If this video has given you something to think about, and you'd like a little support exploring some of the ideas, the concepts that I've talked about, or if you'd like a little bit of support in general, you will find guided meditations, SOS sessions, mindful exercises and programs, solfeggio, inspired soundscapes and original piano compositions, all sorts of stuff designed to cultivate awareness and help you challenge those old patterns and create positive change within the Rise app, which is what I've been working on for the last 2 years. It's available on Android Play and in the App Store, and it's totally free. It's on me for 7 days. There, in fact, I thought I'd finished, then I haven't. There should be a QR code floating around somewhere on the screen if I've done my job right. So if you scan that, it'll take you straight through, and you can choose which of the versions is best suited or most suited to you. I am waffling. Thanks again for watching. Seriously, have a wonderful rest of your day. Wherever you are in the world, just keep smiling, stay safe, and hold on to your happiness. Take care. See you soon. Bye.